I was wrong about Kamen Rider Gotchard. When episode 1 came out, I made a reaction video where I asked, why does everyone hate this show? From what I was seeing, people were incredibly uninterested in what was going on this year compared to previous ones, myself included. I remember saying Hotaro's actor wasn't great and that I really couldn't see myself getting behind him in the way I did with Ace the year prior. And then I checked out the second episode of Gotchard and then took a really long break from watching the show. And now that I'm caught up on everything, I think I get it now. During my binge session, I found myself weirdly nostalgic for a show that I'm just now watching for the first time. And after talking to myself out loud on the toilet, I think I was able to pinpoint exactly what I was feeling so nostalgic for. Vibes. My friend Ginga Herb said it best on Twitter, so I'm just gonna quote him here.
I like Gotchard. It's a very back to basics feeling Kamen Rider, but it reminds me of Double O's, mostly Forza and Wizard. Like Wizard in terms of like, I mean, it's not magic, it's alchemy. But you know what I'm saying? But and then Forza in tone. That's what I'm saying. There's no new ideas, but they're fresh. But it's fresh because we ain't seen no shit like this in a while.
Gotchard feels like Double O's, Forza, and Wizard, which were the shows that were airing when I first got into Kamen Rider. I love these shows. I'd probably have to say they're all somewhere in my top 10 list. And when looking at these and Gotchard on paper, they really are all the same show. An overly optimistic character finds himself entangled with a special friend, and when I say special, I don't only mean that they're special in terms of the story, but that they also might be lovers. And the two are accompanied by an ensemble of flanderized character tropes as week to week we watch them solve problems for different people in their local communities who end up having some sort of connection to the monster of the bye week. So I don't understand why Gotchard's first 2 episodes, among some clips on Reddit and Twitter, left me feeling so disappointed, especially now that I really like the show after sticking with it for a minute. I believe that my issue had to do with expectations, which is admittedly unfair to the show. Kamen Rider Gaim felt like a major shakeup for the series as it was airing. It was the first time in a while we had a true-to-form, early Heisei-style story and mystery that stretched throughout the entire series. To me, it felt new and fresh, and I saw some older fans calling it an unexpected but really invited return to form. Now, today, it feels exactly the same as damn near every other show that's aired in the past 10 years. It's hard for me to admit this, but Double O's, Forza, and Wizard can feel kind of samey, especially if you watch them back to back year after year. But what is it that makes Gaim's divergence to what was considered the norm at the time so welcome when compared to Gotchard's, which really just left me wanting more? I think it's because it's easy to perceive the complex storyline in Gaim as such a dramatic increase in quality when you compare it to the simplicity of the first 4 Neo Heisei series. But just because it's more complex, that doesn't make it necessarily better or even more well crafted. Simplicity is not a bad thing. I often get really annoyed when people critique movies like Expendables or Michael Bay's Transformers. Oftentimes people will say that they lack interesting storylines and are full of like mindless explosions, but I don't think Michael Bay was trying to make the next Citizen Kane when he came up with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Out of the Shadows. Don't get me wrong, I understand if it's not your thing, but I think it's unfair to say that these films are poorly made or are just outright bad movies. They were created with the intention of making films that were full of action and fun. It's a disservice to them to say that the filmmakers did not accomplish what they set out to do when they were making these films. And I'm not saying that Gotchard is just full of mindless violence. What I'm saying is that Toei never intended for this to be this big J-drama with rubber suits. Toei most likely assumed that after years of fairly similar concepts, it'd be nice to have a more simplistic story. We've had these long, semi-complex mysteries for over a decade now. It's about time that we've had a return to that slice of life formula that was around during the early 2010s. They never intended on doing anything else but that. Except for that first episode. Tonally, it's so off from what you would expect from a show like this. It's actually pretty bad. And I think that's because Gotchard, while not having a complex story, has a complex Premise that requires a lot of explaining. Kamen Rider Double is about two detectives solving mysteries in Chicago, Japan. Kamen Rider O's is a wandering homeless man who gets involved with ancient demons. Forze is about a high schooler who's interested in making friends and sometimes goes to space. Wizard is a fucking wizard. You see how the premise for all four of these shows can be so neatly wrapped up in just one sentence? Gotchard is about a secret alchemy academy that's based out of the attic of the local high school, the students of which academy are tasked with retrieving all 101 chemis, which are Pokemon-like creatures trapped in cards that have recently escaped after they were set loose by a trio of evil sisters who might come from a parallel dimension. I really tried my hardest to make that as like short and succinct as possible. The other four shows started simple and increasingly became more complex over time. In fact, we didn't even see Double or Wizard obtain their drivers in the pilot episodes because their premise made it easy to accept that they were Kamen Riders before episode 1. At the time, it was never important how they got their powers, just that these were the people with the powers. Gotchard starts like every other Reiwa Kamen Rider has, having a very story-dense introduction full of exposition, but then it suddenly turns into this simplistic form factor that we've been talking about this entire time. The series isn't bad. It's just that first episode is terrible at setting our expectations. Tonally, it's too dramatic of a switch up when compared to the rest of the series. And it's not that the first episode is a bad episode, it just had a lot to explain in order to get the audience caught up. Once I was able to accept that, the show's been fucking great. For now. For about a month, there have been some rumors about there being a serious shakeup in the way Gotchard's been being produced due to like poor reception and stuff. And more recently, we've gotten reveals for a ton of riders that are going to be in the show, along with this new poster, which seems very different tonally. And I also just watched episode 16, and I have to say, you can feel it. I'm excited to see where the show goes, but now that I'm fond of how the show has been presenting itself, I don't want it to change, even if I didn't like it at first, which definitely makes me feel ungrateful. I would be a hypocrite though if I didn't like keep in mind all of the points that I've been trying to make during this video, because Toei's intentions have changed and now the show is going for a different tone for obvious reasons. I just wish I was able to appreciate what we had while it was airing. I worry that Boom Boomger is going to have a very similar reputation. It doesn't look like it's going to have like this big serialized complex narrative that we've seen in like Dawn Brothers or King Oger. But before it airs, I just want you to remember that like it's not trying to be. The suits are very goofy and silly looking, and that's the intention behind them. I'm not saying you have to like Boom Boomger or this new direction for Gotchard, but try and give them a fair shake before you write it off. And hopefully you'll be surprised.